Get your roast potatoes ready, peel your vegetables, get your carrots, peas and gravy ready, because you know what time it is. Yes, it's time for another roasted version of GammonVision. Yes, we delve into another couple of chapters of Brexit, why we won, and how to explain this historic victory to your friends. So, let's get into it. The first chapter of today's readings is Lies, Deceit and Exaggeration. Remain's explanation for their defeat is simple. On top of the old white thicko mantra, Leave, Farage and Johnson sold lies, deceit and exaggeration. Strangely enough, even though throughout the campaign I say that we saw Cameron Osborne and the leaders of the EU, US and world institutions offer little but lies, deceit and exaggerations. Is he going to go into any of these lies, deceit and exaggerations that these people told? No. So much so, it has become a personal hobby to shoot down the more popular absurdities on Facebook and LinkedIn. Is he going to provide any of these examples? I'll give you a clue. No. But really, the campaign was never about the spoken words. So the campaign was not about putting forth an argument as to the reason why the UK should remain or leave in the EU. It was about something else entirely. So it was never about the spoken words, never about the pronouncements from the great and the good or the vile Leave figureheads. The words were of little account because the real campaign was very simple. So are you ready? This is what the real referendum was about. It wasn't about remaining or leaving in the EU. It was about, do you want to be in charge of your life or should someone else be? That is the biggest bowl of libertarian claptrap I've read so far in this book. But there you go. So, the next one, hatred and derision. So, it is remarkable how much hate and derision Remain are capable of. A side so determined to present Leave as the haters. While 17 million Leave voters, more than expected, a party to government, are derided as racist, xenophobic thickos. It is Remain who took to the streets in protest. Remain who resorted to name-calling, to insults. Did we see crowds of Leavers, Paris-style, in the echoes of Munich in the 30s, descending on foreign businesses and people? Hardly. We were all at home astonished and delighted. While, and this is where it gets racist, while migrants, the Muslims, the French have been rioting, killing and bombing across Europe. The worst that someone could come up with Leave is that apparently there has been some name calling. And a shop was burned, so there's an idiot out there. You're also forgetting the politically motivated murder of Joe Cox. Needless to say, the numerous physical assaults that have happened on immigrants in this country since 2016 that has been on the rise. You know. Remain are so determined to deride and hate Leave that they are incapable of seeing that they're the ones who are emotionally overwrought, angry and determined to get revenge. I'm sorry, but making a political argument isn't deciding to get revenge. As Ian Hislop said in that question time, the day after the referendum, when someone asked him, should Leave... should Remain just shut up? His response was true as it is still today. That we have the right to go on making this argument, even if you lost. A political party, if it loses a general election, does not say, oh, I've got nothing to say for the next 5 years. Bye. That's not how a functioning democracy works. And yet, leave. Every single time issues are brought up, serious issues, it's just the idea that we should somehow just believe that everything is going to be fine. That's not how politics and policy works. You don't just implement a policy or just say you're going to do something without saying, or even saying, this is what might potentially happen, so we have these in place to make sure that doesn't happen. You know, this is why the Brexit Party didn't release a manifesto, and we will be going over it when they eventually release a manifesto. But I don't see one coming anytime soon. In fact, I fully expect them to not release a manifesto if they stand for general election. And bear in mind, people, you voted, if you voted for the Brexit Party, you voted for a party that is currently in talks to sit in the EU Parliament with the far-right nationalists. Are you still comfortable with Farage allying himself with those people in the European Parliament with your vote? Are you still comfortable voting for the Brexit Party knowing that that is what is happening right now? Because the only people spreading hate and derision are the Leave campaign still. Still, after all this time, they are laying the blame for all Britain's ills on migrants. That is just completely unacceptable. Especially when you had Theresa May, when she was the Home Secretary, who had 5 studies commissioned to find out if immigration was negatively affecting the United Kingdom. All 5 came back and said, no, immigration is not negatively affecting the United Kingdom. In fact, it is a boon to the United Kingdom, as European migrants were giving in more money to the tax than they were actually taking out. And remember, the predominant people migrating to this country were not people from the EU. It was people from outside the EU. That is not going to change. So if you think that you voting for Brexit because you want to get rid of all these pesky EU migrants, you've achieved nothing. Just saying. Oh, and the lies, deceit and exaggeration, by the way, it's funny looking back at it now, the fact that Boris Johnson is being taken to court over those lies. So yeah, we'll try and push on a couple more of these chapters. Yeah, we'll do 2 more. So, lack of trust. So, the lack of trust in the government is a deep concern to politicians. It should be. If you want to be free, then you have to eject the masters. There is no excuse for people to be managed. An ideal government would be one that managed the common resources, not the common people. It is entirely a presumption on the part of people who like being politicians, who like serving in governments and the government institutions, that their job is to manage us. No, their job is to provide a service so that we may go on about our lives as we see fit, and provided that we don't harm another, that it should be all there is to it. The expansion of, in quotations, harm should be treated with caution, as it has largely become an excuse for ever more intervention. It may be time for us to think about wielding in that presumption so that the government actually serves the people. So, first of all, this idea of a lack of trust. One of the big problems we have in the UK is this huge political apathy. It is no secret that since the 80s, less and less people have been voting. So it is no secret that when you look at, for example, the recent European elections, if it had been a referendum and that had been the turnout rate, Remain would have won. More people voted as a whole for Remain parties than they did Brexit parties. But it also goes to show the country is still divided on this issue. And that no serious, I keep on saying this, that there has still been no serious discussion from leavers about why it would be good for Britain to leave the European Union. There has been no serious discussion. It has only been slogans such as, global Britain will be able to trade with the rest of the world. We do that now. And we've had very good terms because we do it through being a European Union member. You know, how are we going to, quote unquote, get better terms and better trade deals where we are now just one country, whereas the deals we have now are negotiated as part of a union of 28 nations coming together? How are we going to get a better trade deal? But this whole thing of the expansion of harm, what about the laws that have been passed recently to stop people discriminating against people of homosexuality? What about the recent law to stop, landlords throwing people out of their houses with no good reason? You know, there are tons of laws that, under this guy's example, we should apparently be getting rid of. But, you know. Anyway, that's another chapter down, so this will be the last one. This is the last one, pushing to leave. Many people served to push the Britons to backing leave, to get out and vote, and to give Britain its historic victory. Yet Boris did his part, and Farage has earned a place in democratic history for obliging Cameron to give us the opportunity to vote. It was a very minor issue, and if anything, it was all about trying to unite the Conservative Party. Every political historian going forward will say that was what the reality of the vote was about. And as you can see today, the whole reason we are in this mess is because the Conservative Party cannot come together and make its mind up about Europe. This is why parties that have a very definitive idea going forward about Brexit are leading in the polls. The Liberal Democrats pulling ahead, leading in the polls. I wonder why. Regardless of our opinion of the man, his gift to the British people is unparalleled in modern times and should be recognised as such by any true lover of democracy. That is just an absolute inept reading of political history, especially now. Which is why he will never receive that accolade from Remain. Against our betters and our masters, the people gave the traditional two-finger salute and won. So what if people, and there were many people, who voted out there to be like Norway? Do you think that their will is being carried out? Because, as I've said before, if you took those 17 million people and generally gave them all the offers that were on the table, the Norway offer, the Switzerland offer, the Canadian offer, or a no deal, I guarantee you that the Norway offer would win. I am, or should be, one of those betters and masters. A public schoolboy raised in the home countries, 6 years in the city, the financial district, 30 years in London. I could have voted Remain with London and the home counties. Yet to me, the issue was far simpler and far more important than my wallet and my personal cost benefits. And yet, in places like Yorkshire and the rest of the UK, it is going to decimate people's wallets. Yet when someone decides that they have the right to decide my future, I say no. No one was saying that. No one was saying that. You have yet to give an example as to what laws and what people were telling to do with your lives. You have not put that once in this book so far yet. And yet this is apparently your core argument. So I will say no, and I will bear the consequences. Well, I hope many Brexiteers will bear the consequences of the chaos that is about to happen. So for London, if you are a Liberal or a financier, basically you voted for your agenda and your wallet and voted Remain. Here's the thing. I have no skin in the game when it comes to an agenda. I want to remain in the European Union because it offers Britain the best economic opportunities. Look, I've said before on this channel, the EU is not perfect, but it's better than being out there by ourselves. And if we stay in it, we can actually reform the European Union. One of the people who is being selected to run to replace Jean-Claude Juncker is going to be potentially be the first woman commissioner, and she has heavily gone after corporations such as Apple and Google to get them to pay their tax. So liberals overrode the right to self-determination in their own minds because of their agenda fundamentally abhorrent. So apparently, liberals fundamentally abhor the right to self-determination. What are we doing to, deny these self-determinable rights? Of course, you're forgetting this guy never explains himself. It's just a one rambling blog after another. They know how it should be. Financiers overrode it because of their prime focus on money, set aside everything else. And by the way, I don't know if you've noticed, we'll probably go over it, but there is a story recently that New York has overtaken London as the financial capital of the world. Because of Brexit. Something that, once again, Brexiteers claimed would never happen. Would never happen. It's not going to happen. But at this point, I'm sorry, you can pretty much say Brexiteers say one thing is going to happen and the exact opposite is going to happen. This is why if a Brexiteer ever says that the UK is not going to literally sink into the Atlantic Ocean, I would genuinely be worried that the UK is going to sink into the Atlantic Ocean, given their track record at this moment in time. Leave voters, left and right, even though their wallets might suffer in the short term, voted for something else. At the heart, they voted for other people, not telling them what to do. It sounds almost childish. Yes, it is. You have a very childish notion of the whole referendum campaign. Isn't it that the essence of freedom itself, of self-determination? More importantly, some things are worth suffering the short-term consequences. Brexit has been shown by multiple studies, not only just done independently, but from the government itself, that Brexit is going to be a long-term thing. A very long-term thing. Are you still ready to suffer those consequences? Because Andrew, it's people like you who are going to get the blame, and rightly so, because you are out there saying that Brexit is going to be sunshine and roses, and, you know, oh, it's only going to be short, quote-unquote, short term, but they never say how long that short term's going to be. As it happens, the sky hasn't fallen on our heads, but even had we been required to suffer recession and turmoil, it would have still been worth it. So, people losing their jobs, their financial security, bankruptcy, losing their home, not being able to feed their children, is apparently an acceptable outcome for this guy. I'm sorry, but this guy is an absolute scumbag. We'll finish the chapter off. Oh, I forgot this was coming. So we'll finish the chapter off on this. So remember, and it would have all been worth it. Or should we not have fought World War II because it might have been disturbing to our economy? That, my friends, is the most dumbest statement ever. By the way, as a matter of historical context, if you look at economies during World War II, the UK was the only in Europe to actually grow. But, you know, history, you know. So, that is the end of today's Gammon Vision, and I hope that once again you've been enlightened to explain to your friends as to why Leave won this historic vote, and once again be presented with answers with no reason to back them up when people say that Leave lied and not been brought up, with examples apparently from Facebook and LinkedIn not brought up, with other reasons apparently to vote with not brought up, with people apparently voting with agendas, which apparently we were told, if you remember last episode, was completely wrong, but now apparently voting with agenda is the completely right and willful things to do because it's all down to self-determination, which apparently the left are against for some reason, but has no examples to be shown. You know, welcome to the world through GammonVision, and next time, the next chapter we'll be reading is called Not Yet Enlightened. So, I hope you're ready, because, good God, we're only 22 pages in of 90 to go. So, oh, and by the way, if you have feedback, feel free to contact Andrew Marr on this address, which he freely gives in his book. So if you've got, shall we say, comments or criticisms that you want to send to him, feel free to send them to him at that address. So, there you go. Enjoy.